Carly, hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, very good. Thank you very much. Thank you for the donut.
Thanks for having me.
Every other guest, take note. Carly turned up with Krispy Kreme donuts, and it's been a nice sugar boost. So I might be bouncing around a little bit twitchy, but thank you. It was lovely.
No pressure, guys.
So we're going to talk about women in media and women in leadership. But as is traditional, if you could kick us off with a little bit of a potted history of your career to date, please.
Oh, where do we start? Many, many moons ago. So I started my career in regional press back in
So did I.
2003, 2004. So I worked for Newsquest.
Oh, so did I.
Did you?
Yeah.
Love that.
They were regional newspapers when I joined, but they were Newsquest by the time I left.
Yeah, East London and West Essex Guardian.
Oh, Sutton Guardian here. Sutton Guardian.
So yeah, love that. Started there selling in the wonderful world of classified. So knew I could sell. Got my first job there, and then was bedazzled by the bright lights of national press. And my manager at the time, I think, she'd worked at national press, and she'd said, "Oh, you don't want to go there. They don't pay very well." And I was like, "Well, I think they do."
I beg to differ. Yeah.
And then took my leap into the big bad world of national press. Worked at a few major newspapers, two major publishers, and then fell into fell into kind of smaller publishers. So I worked for Dennis Publishing, loved it, and I dare anyone who's ever worked there to say they didn't. And now work for Audience Q, adtech.
And tell us about Audience Q.
Audience Q, we are fab. Audience Q, we're a geolocation data omnichannel solution. So using the power of human movement data at scale globally, but with accuracy to deliver campaigns for clients.
Cool. Okay. So we're going to talk about women in media, and what I thought might be quite fun is to start with some of the challenges, experiences, and maybe positives that you saw in your first job in media way back when, and then sort of like bring it up to date to where you are now. So, like, we kind of maybe try and remember what's changed, what hasn't changed, what needs to change, and see where we go. So in your first job in the bright lights of let's start with the regional newspaper job. So still bright lights, I'm sure, but what was that experience like when you first came into that job? Can you remember? Because you would have been a new career to you, right? So you didn't know anything to start with.
No. So I'd done sales, but it was like more B2B. But I'd never done sales in the aspect of like classified ads into newspapers. We were actually I think we're a mostly female team, right, from memory. And I had, honestly, and I still credit her to this day, one of the most fantastic managers. Her name's Yvonne Geraghty. And if she ever gets to see this.
I'll tag her.
Yeah, she was brilliant, Yvonne. Was a great champion, wanted you to do well, enabled you to do well, here's loads of leads, this is what you can do, if you haven't hit your target, how can I help you, that sort of stuff. She was fantastic. But it was a really great team, everyone kind of worked together. It was nice. That was my first kind of female only kind of, we all work together. Again, as women, we do that. It's natural. We do, time of the month, we don't get on, whatever it is. But no, it was great. And I think as my entry into media, it was a good one. I then went up to national.
Was there good training out of interest? Because regional newspapers, the training was amazing.
It was. I mean, you had all your Dipiders and your Pandas, and I don't use them. I don't use them anymore, I don't think, as much. But yes, it was good. Really, really good.
Since you've shouted out Yvonne, Melanie Burgess was my manager in regional newspapers, and she was brilliant as well. So I'm going to shout her out as well. She just reckons, if you're watching, Melanie, like, you're not going to retire. She reckons she's going to retire. I saw on LinkedIn, but there's no way. No one's slowing that woman down. It's force of nature. Anyway, so it was an all-women environment. Have you had that since?
No, I don't think so. No, I think going up to national press, it wasn't. It was a mix, but I think from that start of I had female leaders going up, but it was then predominantly male, and I guess that was probably indicative of the industry. back then more so, still is, of that it was predominantly male managers, so like group heads and running departments. Yes, I think that was my first entry into kind of, would I say, yes, my first ever challenge was there. So I was a young mum, had my eldest son when I was 20. So was navigating, starting in the big bright lights of national press, as out there all the time, all your meetings on, 20 calls a day, 100 calls a day, 20 effective, all of your meetings, hitting your targets, but also being a single parent at a young age. So by the time I'd gone up to that role, I was probably 23, 24, and juggling being a mum, getting him to breakfast club, getting to work, and then being able to get back. And he was always my priority, forever was, and my children forever will be. But I didn't find the balance in, or what we would have now, the opportunity to have that flexibility to, make allowances for me to get to work. So I could not. So
you had to be in at 8 on the dot or something like that?
I had to be there at 8:45.
Right.
Or 9:15, I can't remember what it was. And there was no flexibility for it to fall earlier. Now, do I think it could have been? Yes, in my opinion. However, those were the restrictions that were there back then. God, it feels like 700 years ago.
Yeah.
But I think that was the first time where I'd experienced that what was my personal situation could affect my job, affect my progression, affect, in essence, what was going to enable me to provide for my family, being the sole provider for me and my small child at that point. So I then left.
So what was the situation? So if I can just sort of dig in there. So I'm just thinking back to my wife's experience when we had our first. What was the experience like if your child was sick, for example, and you're at work, because you're in London, right? Were they quite flexible about
I was
understanding you need to go home, or?
I mean, yes. I mean, I remember one occasion, and it was the school was closing. It was a snow day, and I said I couldn't get into work, and I was asked to give the details of the school for them to check.
Right. Well, okay.
And saying it now, you would go, what?
Yeah.
Because no one would dare, I don't think now, even think of asking that question. And even for me in my own company, wouldn't dare to ask that question. But yeah, I had that question. Sick days, I was fortunate. I had a great support network. My mum was fantastic. And I'd be like, he's not well. And she'd be like, I'll have him for you. And I had the flexibility of her work where she could do that.
Yeah.
But there were times when I had to be home. And, working from home wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
Then.
So you had an all-female team, and including your boss.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with it, so first time that you've had that. So probably it was our first and last time that you've had that complete female sort of environment, I suppose. So from a woman in media point of view, apart from the fact that it was super inflexible with your start time, let's say, and like, were there any other sort of red flags or things that you thought weren't treating women with kind of respect and fairness and due thought?
I think probably was blissfully unaware of the things that I would say we know now, right? So one, ignorance, it didn't affect me, so didn't necessarily feel it. I am a person of that. I try not to always look for the issue, because if we look for the issue, we're always going to have some sort of blocker as to why we can't do things. And I've said this before, where, for choice of a better word, bollocks to the problem, that you're not going to tell me I can't. Because if I want to, if I can't do it here, I'll do it somewhere else. And I think that's the mentality that I'd like to continue with. But if I was to give anyone advice, would be to, if you've got a blocker in one place, don't let that be your blocker everywhere. You can take that and say, okay, fine, well, I can't do it here, well, I'll do it over there.
Yeah. Okay. And your next job after that was where did we go? It's hard to remember the order, isn't it?
Somewhere where we've both worked.
Okay, right. Are we not naming them?
We can. Northern and Shell.
Yeah.
So at Northern and Shell, I again fairly mixed. as in the staff. I was running a team on classified. Northern and Shell was Northern and Shell. And
I
I
used to
have
say, if you can sell there, you can sell anywhere.
You can sell anywhere, 100%. I think, look, some of my best experiences in terms of work. Have you ever worked as hard as you've probably ever worked there? No. Well, yes, but no, because that gives you your grounding on, like, you can definitely work. If you was to interview someone and you say, where did you work? Northern Shell, like, you're hired.
Yeah. You're a survivor.
But yeah, I enjoyed my time there. I think I left there and went to a really small publisher that I just don't even want to bother naming, just because it was such an insignificant mark on my CV. My next significant job was then at Dennis, to which the next big chunk of my career was there, and some of the best times I've had, I'd say. Had some fantastic managers, some people that really championed me, been part of launches. So I was part of the launch of Coach magazine. If you remember Coach magazine, it was distributed freely at stations, like when Stylist was and Shortlist used to be distributed. So I was part of that. I used to work on fitness magazines, and then worked on The Week, which was the last brand that I worked across. That was a Dennis owned product, before it was acquired by Future. And 2P'd over to Future, and was there for a short period of time, and then kind of was like, I'd seen a lot of my peers had left, everyone I'd worked with and loved working with, and there's some fantastic people at Future, but I was thinking at that point, inflection point where I was like, I've had enough now, and if I don't leave, because I love the brand, I will be stuck, and I'm not getting younger. Although I don't look that old, not getting younger.
So young.
25 forever. But want to learn. And was I necessarily going to get what I wanted there without circumnavigating, it's this person's role and you can't move here, and wasn't necessarily as fluid as you would like in terms of being able to get opportunity to do other things. I didn't feel, for me.
Okay.
So that was let's go and explore the world of adtech. Which was scary place for me, because I'd been in print throughout my whole of career, but print with digital. So I'd sold across the two channels. But adtech was like a shiny new, like, ooh. Yeah. And kind of the two things that with taking the job that I did at the time, so still with Audience Q, but I came in as a business director, was at the very least, I'm going to learn a lot here, if that's the only thing I take away from it. And here I am today in the role that I'm in.
Awesome. So what are some of the challenges that you've seen yourself as a woman, or seen other people have, as you've kind of taken that? Obviously a lot of your career still to come. Like, this isn't like this is your life, but what are some of the challenges that you've experienced along the way that are either hopefully improving or still need to be improved?
So I think it would be, for me personally, it's personal experiences that I think that depending where you work and what you experience shapes kind of your view of being a woman in not just media, but just in the workplace, and how laws coming will affect that. So my youngest is 5, and our journey for pregnancy was with IVF. I was working at Dennis Publishing at the time, and I didn't feel any issues with kind of talking about. We kind of started our journey, and didn't talk about it openly because just don't want to jinx anything. I'm very much of a universal keep it to yourself, and it will come to you. But didn't feel afraid to go and talk to HR or my manager or senior leadership at that time in that this was the process that I was going through. So I'm going to need to not maybe be here because I've got, appointments that I need to go to. And it was fine. We will communicate with you as you want. You say what you need to, because I think, the fear is that we have to take sick days. And then, you're worried is that, well, I've had so many sick days, or I've had to take this day off or half a day for doctors. And now they're going to start looking at my record if there's redundancies that I'm going to, she's had a lot of absence. So I felt really supported within that.
Great.
And then fell pregnant, ecstatic, again, very supportive, really great supportive team. And that was just before COVID and lockdown. And we went for an appointment and got some devastating news that one of my twins had a congenital heart defect. So we knew that she was unwell. So for me, lockdown was a blessing in disguise. So we were able to, I was able to work still from home, go through what we was going through in privacy, but I didn't have to come into work. So it means I could still go to my appointments. And if I was a little bit upset, no one saw me because I was like behind the screen at home. Unfortunately, my daughter passed away when she was born, and I have a healthy son, Kason, and had a really fantastic support. Honestly, really great. They were fantastic. So, really supportive. My direct manager at the time, she came to see me. Shout out to Caroline Finner, you're brilliant. And the entire senior leadership team. There, whether it was just checking in, the team I worked with, sending hampers, just like basically saying to me, your time is whatever you need. Okay. Now, if I bring that back to the industry, and that there's probably, well, not just our industry, but women working who have experienced baby loss, whether it is a miscarriage or stillbirth, or going through the challenges that comes with IVF, your rounds don't work because it still feels like a loss, right? Is that we don't know how to talk about it, or whether we can safely talk about it. Again, with do we have to take sick days? How is it going to be classified, my absence? Do people know how to talk to me about it? Do businesses know how to support women, and not just women, men going through those challenges? So I've always been quite happy to talk about it. For me, it's, my daughter existed and this is my way of her legacy. I can still talk about her. And was part of a panel last year on New Digital Age where Kate Ingram spoke about her daughter, Osley. And it was the first time for me that I'd heard anyone talk about a similar experience that I'd been through. And it was really refreshing. It's a good emotion because we don't. And we don't always have somebody who you can just look at and go and say, thank you. Thank you for being my voice when I've not been able to have a voice.
Yeah.
So that was the first time that I'd ever, probably in media, had somebody or heard somebody talk about something so raw but powerful that could actually make a difference to all of the women that were sat in the room, for them to feel safe, that they could just message her or somebody who has put themselves out there to say, it's okay and you're not alone. Because we do sometimes, even though you're not the only person who's experienced it, you do feel like you're kind of in that journey on your own, that actually you can be supported. And actually we're so much further, and there's still a long way to go, right? And I think the laws in terms of looking at that protective leave around baby loss and it not being...
Take a break.
No, honestly.
Are you sure?
Yeah, no, absolutely fine. It not being, again, classified as sick. So you don't get worried about having that as a mark on your file.
Yeah.
That if you do have a male manager, that if you're worried about talking to them, that you can maybe have somebody who's outside as an ally that can come in and say, well, I can broach that and have that conversation for you in a safe space, someone who understands you, who can represent you, without, you feeling that you have to kind of justify why you feel the way you feel. I need to take time off. Why? Because I feel like crap.
Yeah.
And that's all I want to say. you should just be saying, I need to take time off. And they go, it's okay. You let me know when you're ready to come back. Or if you want to talk about it, we can. And you just leave that space, because a lot of the time we will come to you when you least expect it. And sometimes that's a shock for some people because they're not prepared for it. But I think actually having those uncomfortable conversations and actually just having this as a platform as well, if I can make one person's day and they can go, actually, thank you for saying it. Or it's a man and he comes and says, you know what, actually, I feel like my wife needs someone to talk to, or I haven't had someone to speak to. What you've said so openly is actually really refreshing, that we can have the conversation. Don't be scared to have it.
Yeah, I've seen that just recently with a few podcast episodes, which I don't think are out yet, where people have been quite open about some challenges that they've had. And I've seen some of myself in some of those challenges where you're right, because if you live in your own head in many ways, 100%. Don't you? And if you don't see it and you can't recognize it anywhere, you do feel a little bit like, oh, it's just me probably. It's just my shit. I've got to get on with it.
Yeah.
But when you see that there's somebody else, it feels like, I suppose that old cliche is like, a problem shared is a problem halved.
Yeah. But also I think it's about giving understanding in that, if we've ever managed people, that if somebody's not performing, poor performance doesn't always mean rubbish salesperson, right? And from a sales perspective, actually there can be other underlining issues, and it's okay. Well, how do we enable leaders to be able to have difficult conversations? And you may not be qualified in doing so, but it's about just creating that safe space of someone saying to you, this is what I'm dealing with. And you say, okay, well, look, I can't help you with that, but I know someone who can, or what can I do to support you through work? But for me, it was I threw myself back into work. That's work for me is my anchor, right? So one thing I've got, control freak, I can control. So, am I good at what I do? Well, I believe so. I can control how I feel within work. I can control what I do. I can control what you see of me. I can control the narrative around me. All of the other stuff you've got no control over. So I threw myself into it. So people say to me, Carly, do you need time? I'm like, no, I just want to do it. Let me work, because this is my therapy, is being busy and taking that raw emotion and channeling it into something that I can make good at the other end.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah, for sure.
And I think it's just letting people do that.
Yeah.
Authentically.
So you're a leader now.
I am.
When you hear the word leadership, what do you hear? What comes to mind?
It's going to sound weird, right? I've had a lot of the people that I've managed, well, not all of them. Some of them have said, you're just like my work mum. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. But I've always, the leaders that have stood out to me the most, I've always seen somebody as a nurturer. Okay, so I've always wanted to enable the people who work. When I say for me, I don't like saying for me, with me, because we work alongside each other. We've all got one goal, is to make the business great, is to champion them. And it's one thing that I find quite difficult to do for my own self, right? And always believed, look, if I'm going to get anything, it should be that someone's gone, yeah, she's really good and she deserves that nomination, or she's really good and we need to give a salesperson of the year, or whatever it may be, or we need to put her forward for that. And actually, that doesn't always happen for many reasons. One being that, there's a lot of leaders that are still navigating their own positions and where they want to be. So they're focused on self, and there's nothing wrong with that. That sometimes the people who are up and coming do get forgotten. And I've been one of those, felt like I was one of those forgotten, where I wanted someone to tell me that I was good. Mm-hmm. And then kind of started to realise, no, I don't need someone to tell me that I'm good. Believe that you're good. And if you fuck up, you fuck up, right? We're not saving lives. We're not in media anyway. That we can actually just be yourself and do what's good for you. So I want to say it's nurture. So, I'm always saying, I don't want to be the one who's just doing thought leadership. You do it as well, because actually you're equally a face of this business as I am. And within the agency, it shouldn't just be me wanting to speak to senior people. You go and do that. Because I was happy sometimes just being internal and, making sure the team was doing what they were meant to do and, keeping everything neat and the deadline went well, and realised actually I've done myself a bit of a disservice in that. But it's okay, because if I've enabled other people to progress further, it's fine. I'm happy for that. You know, it's all good.
You gave a shout out to Yvonne and myself to Melanie at the beginning. Hopefully one day there'll be somebody in 20, 30 years going, oh, shout out to Carly. Like, she was awesome. Yeah,
I hope so. I think it's important. I always say that I want to be scared of my people, because that keeps me on my toes and makes me then want to develop. I don't think we should get idle. Because that they're coming up behind you, that they're that they're as passionate as you, they're as driven as you, they want your job. I think that's great. That ambition is fantastic. Right. You know, I want my boss to think, yeah, she wants my job, and I do.
So you got nurture. So is discipline the opposite of nurture?
No, I think I'd like to say that there should be a mutual respect. I've come from places that ruled with fear. Do I think there's a place for it in this day and age? No. I think it's just it's respect. You know, if
things have changed a lot in that regard, haven't they? There used to be quite a few shouty bosses. We both worked for one, probably the king of shouty bosses, and it was just accepted and the norm. But it feels like generations now, it feels like you go to prison for behaving like that. You know, it's so different now. Like the way that people, whether it's that they feel that they need to speak to you that way, or that they just do speak to you that way, but it's changed massively in the time of being in media. Well,
I think actually you can liken it to cultures, and I was reading an interesting article about, you know, culture isn't always driven from the top down. It comes both ways. It's from bottom up as well. We have to come together to create the ideal culture, and not we don't always get it right. And I would be the first person to say, do I always get things right? No, but I'm an advocate of, tell me how we need to do this better, because I can't fix it unless we work together to make it better. And then everyone feels like they're part of it, rather than this is our culture and this is where you work and you're going to like it because that's how I've told you this is how it works.
Yeah,
that doesn't work for everybody, because what works for 90% of people doesn't work for the other 10. So actually, if you can come together and say, well, how do we make this? And you're not always going to get everyone on board. How can we make this as a nicer place to work for everybody?
Yeah, for sure. I know when we spoke last week, you said there was an amazing culture. Was it at Dennis?
Yeah.
Yeah. But you found it really difficult to articulate exactly why. Yeah.
Yes. And I think if you was to ask a lot of people that worked at Dennis, they would say, what was the best thing? The culture. It felt like family. And a lot of us all still talk. It felt like we all were working for the same thing. People left Dennis and then came back to Dennis, and they may have left Dennis and then went back to Dennis. I think you just believed in the leaders. You believed in all of the products that you sold, whether it was the big issue because you believed in that it should be doing what it's doing to kind of help homelessness. You believed in the narrative of the week because it was bipartisan and actually gave you a roundup of the news and didn't give you kind of one polarised view of what was happening in the world. And you believed in that because, you know, I think I said to you, like, if you were to ask me what news outlets I would watch, it would be none of them because, you know, everyone's got their own biased view of the world and that's just not how I see it. And that we all kind of believed in the things and the people that we worked with. And sometimes we didn't like each other, and that's all right. I'm sure some people didn't like me, but it's all right. But we all enjoyed being, whether it was at the pub, at the One Ton, at the College Arms. It's fun times.
Yeah. So what do you so nurture, you already mentioned nurture, but what else do you think is like really important for you, like when you think about leadership? What do you think is really important for you, and how you can help those around you? Like you kind of alluded to already that you feel like you want to help raise people up like around you. So nurture obviously is like super important, but can you give me some sort of concrete examples of what that might look like? And
so I think that what I always had official, unofficial mentors. So it wasn't, I never really had anyone particular, and mentorship or menteeship was only something I've really experienced in the last kind of 3-4 years. And that's either being a mentor, and then being a mentee.
Which one was more helpful, do you think?
Being a mentor, I think. And do you know what? I always try to be, I think you asked me this, well, what's your specialist subject? I don't know. right? And I will never pretend to know anything. I will just always come to you with my experiences. And I think that's the best thing I can give. I can't tell you how it's going to work over there. I can tell you a lived experience. I can tell you an opinion and we can discuss it. And I can hopefully coach you into thinking about a way in which how you can solve an issue for yourself. What do you think about that? How does that affect you? And what can you do about it? And a lot of the time we know the answer to things, right? And in those mentoring conversations, I tend to find I get a lot more out of it. And I think it's just who you're matched with as well.
Some people need to talk to think, right? So just asking the questions helps them to think through the problem for themselves.
100%. So I think mentoring is, I think, and again, look, I've hired a new exec on my team. And the first thing I've said to him is, join these groups. Look, and if you can get your mentor, I cannot tell you how important it is for you. Forget working here. Your own, if you as your own business, you as your own champion, what that can do for you and get the things that you need to grow and develop you. And I will always push you and champion you for doing that. I think that's a good, again, I think that's why I linked it to nurturing, is that there's so many things that can come underneath that umbrella.
One of the other things you might say to that exec as well is to show up in public on places like LinkedIn. And I know you said that you've probably only been doing that for the last 3 or 4 years. Yeah,
I think that, again, I probably felt a bit scared as to why would anyone want to hear anything that I have to say, because who am I? And I still have that issue. Right. Again, when you asked me, what do you want to talk about? And I was like, oh, no. What? Who's going to listen to me rabbit on? Thank you. Is that actually just believing in your own self?
Yeah.
And that your voice does matter. And I replied to an email today and someone said, they'd put a few posts out and it didn't really get anywhere. And obviously then thought of you. And I was like, and I just said, keep doing it, because, we don't want to see the same people saying the same things or, or the same people talking about the different, emerging channels or AI or diversity or data or whatever's happening. I want to see new people, because I am one of those new people who's trying to put themselves out, whether it's to, if one female or male, doesn't matter to me, or somebody of ethnicity, because, part of MEFA as being a mixed race individual can take any of the learnings that I've had and go, wow, I didn't go to uni, school of hard knocks, never took the easy road, have had difficult things, but have never let any one of those things stop me in getting to where I am today. Go do it. You can. They're not a hindrance to how far you can, or how far you can go, or what you can achieve. Then my life on earth has been worthwhile.
So, talking to LinkedIn and also podcasts and events and panels and stuff, I think it's getting better, but there's a thing in existence called a manel, as I'm sure you know, which is a panel full of men. And that used to be a thing a lot. I know, having run a podcast, 110 episodes or whatever like that, if I'm not consciously aware and tracking it, it will end up being more men. Yeah. It just seems to be that more men put themselves forward to talk than women. And I know I live on LinkedIn as a job, that's my day job. And I know that about 70%, maybe even 80% some days of the content is from men. So I don't think anyone doesn't want an equal industry. I can't think why anyone wouldn't want that, but we're not, for whatever reason, we're not getting an equality of voice. No. It's very male dominated still. So I just wondered if you've got any thoughts on why that might be, and if so, what we might be able to do to encourage more women to sort of share their thoughts. Because you said there's, who's going to care what I'm going to think? But you've had amazing experiences in media. You're far more experienced and loads of people coming up behind you, but you didn't feel that was worth sharing. And I think, and that's the thing, is that questioning the value of what you think you don't know, but you know. Yeah. I think that there's
Why does it happen? Again, well, there's probably loads of reasons. Okay, one that, well, if we do stay and speak out about things, am I going to get judged by either where I'm working if I'm unhappy about something, or am I going to get jobs in the industry because now I've spoken out and now they're going to go, oh, she likes to talk. And so my things to I'm going to swear again, is fuck 'em, is because, and I said that last year on a panel, an NDA, was that, God, if those places are going to not give you the opportunity, then they're the places you don't want to be.
Yeah.
Right? It's as simple as that. Go and find the places, and they may not be the big names, okay? But sod wanting to be a number on a P&L. And that's why I joined Audience Cues. I didn't want to be a number on a P&L anymore. I wanted to be able to say I've made a difference. And even if that is a small amount of profit at the end of the year, or I've hired people and they've then gone on to do other things to be better elsewhere, fine, right? But actually you can your voice goes further.
Yeah.
And actually sometimes you are blocked in because, actually we let the SLT have the voice because, they are the people who should be out. I think every company should have, as part of their induction, should have for females inroads to Bloom, inroads, for their leadership team who are women, into digital leading ladies, to anyone who's of ethnicity, into MEFA. That should be as a standard as you join. This is what's out there in the market. Go join them, because actually as part of your development as an employee here, if you grow outside, then we grow with you. Well, all that's going to do for an employee is to go, oh, brilliant, these people champion me. I'm more likely to stay and work for these people if they want to encourage me to develop me, right? And actually want my voice to be heard and encourage me to go out and have something to say. Actually, if I was invited to go and do something and then 10 of my staff were, and I'd be like, I'd let them do it over me. Because actually it's important for them to be seen as well. So I think as businesses we need to be better in pushing our people out, in having those voices and being seen. And it doesn't always have to be, you, because you're invited to the panel, or you've been invited to write an article. You say, well, actually, thank you for that, but I've got some really great talent and I really want to champion them. I think they should do it. And actually draw those people who maybe don't necessarily feel comfortable to do it.
Yeah, put them on edge.
Yeah, but we have to be challenged. And I've been working in media over 20 odd years, and this is the first time I've done a podcast. The first time I sat on a panel or wrote an article to be part of that panel was last year. Right. And that's in 20 odd years.
Right. So since you've been on LinkedIn, 3 or 4 years, did you say, that you've been sharing your thoughts?
Started, yeah.
How have you found it? Not as scary as you first thought? Not
as scary as I first thought. And actually, you'll get people that like it and people that share it, or, you'll get someone say, actually, what you said was really great. Or you just don't get anything. And actually, it's okay.
The thing is with LinkedIn, which is one of the reasons I think it puts some people off, is we're taught from other social media platforms to think that likes and shares and all the rest of it, that's the engagement.
Yeah.
But it rarely works that way in my experience. If you were to share something about your baby loss or a new job or something like that, something emotional like that, then people come out of their sort of lurkership and then they're there to support you and you get the sort of engagement. But most often people read without touching like, comment or share, like they're just reading. The amount of times that somebody said something to me about something I wrote on LinkedIn, but they never engaged with it. Yeah. Or somebody's got in contact with me and said, oh, I think you might better help our business. Can we have a conversation? I've been following your content for months, but they never once engaged. And I think if you put something out there and you think, oh, it didn't get enough likes, maybe you feel, well, maybe it wasn't something, I shouldn't have said that. Maybe it wasn't worth it. And I think that's a shame. And I think maybe we can support one another. One way we can support one another is to engage with each other's posts, right? My granddad, which is quite cruel when you think about it, used to say to me, 2 ears, 1 mouth, use them in that ratio. And I've got big ears and I think he was having a pop, but it set me up for a life in sales. And it's the same on social media. If we spent a little bit more time listening to others and showing that we kind of, we see them, we hear them, I think that it would probably make people feel a little bit more comfortable in, oh, well, I will post something because I won't feel like tumbleweed. In fact, that was one of my first clients at Six Sales. He came to me as CEO. He said, "It feels like tumbleweed every time I post." Turns out he was too in the weeds of what he was talking about. His content didn't really make sense to the audience, and when we fixed that, it sort of 10x'd. But that feeling of tumbleweed makes people think, why do I bother?
Yeah.
But if you've got a premium account or you have a paid plus organic plus paid strategy, you can actually see the number of people that have stopped and read, and kind of makes you feel a bit better, I think.
I think it's important for everyone just to believe that actually your opinion is okay, and you can have an opinion on emerging channels or an article that you've read, and that's your opinion.
Yeah.
And what's wrong with sharing it?
Yeah.
You know, we work in an industry of where opinion matters, in terms of decisions made on a brief that we've responded to. It's someone's opinion on whether or not that's the execution that's put forward for the client. Okay, so if you are talking about, you know, this is my thoughts on changes in Meta or how AI is going to affect jobs, or, you know, talking about data compliance and privacy, and, you know, this is how, you know, I think we, as an agency, we should be looking at this for our clients. But, you know, as somebody who's selling data, how we should be talking about it into the market, and sharing your thoughts around what someone else has said, that's fine. But why shouldn't we be talking about it? It shouldn't just be me. It should be everyone that should have thoughts about it. Because why not? Again, I think we're stuck in the rut of the manager said it. Let me share my manager's post. Well, no, share my post and then say what you think.
Yeah. I
want you to share what you think. Because, like, you know, and if you make a mistake, you make a mistake. It's all right.
Yeah, diverse thinking, that's super important, right? We don't just want to hear the company line. Like, no one cares about that. Like, no offense, I technically am a marketer, but like, no one wants to hear what marketing's got to say about your company. I want to hear what you've got to say because you're selling it to me. You're leading the business. What do you think? Like, you know, like, so,
Agreed.
Yeah, it's important. So to finish us off then, Carly, what are the 3 things you think we still need to make good progress on as it relates to equality in media?
I think creating a safe space for women in whatever that looks like within the business in a not so wanky way. You know, we've got a women's group, so you can go and talk about women's problems. It's not just about talking about periods, right? Or perimenopause. It's about, you know, it's funny, it's just that it's come to my mind. A friend of mine applied for a job for a national newspaper, and one of the screening questions were, are you experiencing perimenopause or menopausal symptoms? And if you are, would you be happy to speak to the manager about it? And I was like, I don't know, are you even allowed to ask that question?
Yeah.
And automatically her response was, I don't want to apply for this job. If we have to isolate ourselves in, yes, we're going to go through those things as women, right? But if I feel like that I'm going to be isolated and I have to talk about it because you want to know, because you might feel uncomfortable, because I might be moody one day, or God knows what it's going to be, then we're not creating a safe space, right? It's actually allowing us to be us.
Is there a chance, I'm not trying to defend it, and I don't know whether we're allowed to ask that question or not, I'm certainly not an expert, but is there a chance that they were trying to be supportive? Maybe that's a supportive question.
And it could have been a supportive question, but I think when you've experienced, and as a woman, and she was a woman of colour, things that would hold you back within this industry specifically, or in other roles, you start thinking, are these questions the opposite of that?
Yeah, of course.
And again, it's creating that safe space and letting people know that maybe that question could have been asked later.
Yeah.
When you feel safer in that conversation, rather than why do you need to know that?
Also, the answer's always going to be depends, because you don't know who the manager is yet.
Well, no, it depends. One, and also I don't know if I'm even experiencing that, because maybe I am, maybe I'm not. I don't know. But why does it have to be now?
Yeah.
It could have been later. I think just, again, creating that safe space, and outside of just women, is just championing everybody. You know, that not just having, as you said, like that mammal panel, and having the same faces, whether it's diverse faces, whether it's female faces, whether it's younger audience, whatever. I think we just need to be better all round. I don't want to say, you know, oh, women have a hard time in tech, you know, because there's not the roles and men's get the role. Well, if we keep thinking like that, then we're never going to go for them, which is why they end up getting the roles. So actually, who have we got to blame? Ourselves. And if you're an ethnic minority and you don't feel like, you know, you're represented, and you don't go for something because there's no representation, you're stopping yourself. I tell my sons are black, My sons are black. And I say to them, you have every right and every opportunity as any other demographic or any other race for a job that you go for. You don't see colour. As in, until you reach that blocker, you're equally as qualified as anyone else. So the minute you allow yourself to think like that, you're hindering yourself and blocking yourself. For me, it does not exist. If you tell me I can't do it here, I'll go and do it over there.
Do it somewhere else.
Exactly that.
Brilliant. Carly, that was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. I'm very privileged that you're the first podcast. This is your first podcast, I should say.
It is.
I'm sure it won't be your last. When people hear this, you're going to get lots of offers, I'm sure.
I hope so.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
No, thank you.